Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started as it's right at 10 a.m. here Central Time for us. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar in the series of Get the Most Out of GoAnywhere. Today we will focus on Advanced Workflows module, and at the end of the presentation, I will provide details on upcoming events yet this year. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. We are recording this presentation and we will send it out to all those that registered later this week, so you can review it and replay as needed. We should take about 30 minutes, give or take, depending on the number of questions we get at the end, because we will have time for some question and answer, and any that we cannot get to, we will make sure that someone from the GoAnywhere team does follow up with you. Let's take a quick look at the agenda before I introduce Dan, our speaker. Today we're going to touch on what advanced workflows are, the top reasons to use advanced workflows. We'll look at a typical use case and then jump into the software to see how we can solve some of the issues that our users are seeing. And then we'll leave a little bit of time for any questions and answers you may have. Our speaker today is our Senior Solutions Consultant, Dan Freeman, who has a lot of experience working in both the security field for large healthcare providers and here with Lenovo Software and Help Systems. Dan, are you there?
I sure am.
Great. I will pass over the rights to you, and you can jump right into the content.
All right. Appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you. And thanks to all of you that took the time to join us for this quick session on advanced workflows. Speaking of which, what are advanced workflows? What are they exactly? Well, at a high level, these are all the components that automate and movement of manipulation of data. Now, advanced workflows allow you to prepare data for sending off to customers, trading partners, or just a final destination on your network or other system. They can also allow you to automatically process, manipulate, and move data when on the receiving end. Now, we're talking anything from compressing, decompressing, encrypting, decrypting, data file format translations, conversions, to simple file system tasks. Advanced workflows specify what is to be done with your data to meet your business needs. Now, automation can be achieved by a built-in enterprise scheduler to kick off projects at specific times, or perhaps use your existing scheduler to call projects. You can also monitor the file system to check for files created, modified, deleted, or just whether they exist. These successful conditions will create a list of files that can be passed into a project for further data manipulation or movement. Triggers, based on user actions, can trigger processes, email alerts, file manipulation, or even projects to further automate business processes and data movement. Advanced workflows can be called by our free APIs, GoAnywhere, Commandlets, or the GACMD. Now basically, advanced workflows can solve problems. Problems of decentralization, security lapses, limited auditing and alerting, lack of auto-resume technology, and probably most of all, manual processes that inherently are prone to human error, all of which, some way or another, cost us money. Automation via advanced workflows can eliminate these problems and yield results where they are needed the most, the bottom line. For situations where we want to initiate or perhaps prepare data to be moved, let's take a look at this current slide to illustrate how this can be done. Now, we can take an example of a file that already exists, let's say an Excel file. We want to convert that to a CSV. We want to also PGP encrypt that file. GoAnywhere does have a full key management system. PGP encryption file encryption is one of those key encryptions that we do have. So with those key encryptions, we can encrypt those keys, and then we can go ahead and SFTP those out to our trading partner. All of this automated within a simple project. Now, sometimes files aren't actually files. Maybe we need to grab information out of a database first. This is where we can make use of resources and other servers and services available to us, either on our network or even off-premises like partner FTP servers or even Amazon S3 buckets. Point is, we can extract data like a select statement from a database, for instance, write it out to various file formats, maybe Excel, CSV, flat file, fixed width, and perform any other necessary tasks and then send it on its way. Or maybe, on the flip side, we receive files either by one of our server listener protocols or initiating or doing a GET command. And here we can kind of walk through an example of an advanced workflow in action on the receiving side. Let's say that we receive a file from partner A via the SFTP protocol, and we have designed a trigger that is defined as a upload successful condition from user partner A. When this happens, this will call a project to read in the Excel file, then take that row set or the results of that and insert the information into a customer database. Or maybe you could be monitoring a certain mailbox for incoming emails with a particular subject, or maybe file attachment name, or message body containing certain text. In any case, the advanced workflows can parse out that attachment or any other part of the email in question for further processing or simple notification. Now, at the core of advanced workflows are the projects. Here in this slide is a look at the projects are made, or more appropriately, designed. The project designer window is built around 4 main working areas: the component library, the project outline, the work panel or workspace, and variables. Now, the project outline is a visual representation of your workflow. It defines the business processes to perform, with tasks, decisions, loops, and many other integrated and native functions. All are executed in the order in which they appear. Now, you can drag and drop to move each task item, or right-click to choose from a multitude of sub-functions. Each project contains 1 or more modules, and while the number of tasks within a project are virtually limitless, you can build complex workflows using smaller, more manageable modules or a group of tasks that perform a specific action. Now, every project is saved as an XML file, so for those savvy users who do have the ability to modify projects directly from the XML file if they do choose. The component library has over 100 individual tasks that are organized by function. Just expand the folder, choose your task, and either double-click or drag the action over to your project outline window. The component library is smart enough to place the task only where it was designed to go. Now, the Works panel or Workspace window is where you customize or define your attributes for all the selected tasks in your project outline. This is where you can define fields like variables, file locations, and various other advanced features. And speaking of variables, there can be user or project-defined or common system variables for use. A variable usage can come from reading file formats and placing the results in a row set variable, numerous output variables, or maybe parameters that are passed into a project at runtime. Now, variables allow reuse and great flexibility as placeholders for dynamic values. Once a project is defined, you can validate to make sure it compiles correctly, interactively run the project and view the job log for details. There's also a debug option for step-by-step troubleshooting should the project not yield the desired results or maybe even error out completely. The combination of the component library tasks, drag and drop features, the project outline intuitiveness, and step-by-step debugging options makes project design pretty easy. No more dependence upon developers to write scripts or come up with complex programs for automation. The GoAnywhere Project Designer window was made for anyone to develop workflow automation to meet business goals. Now, each project, when run, is considered a job. Each job has a unique ID associated with it. This with the job number as well as the ID for the completed job audit log. Now, GoAnywhere has an enterprise job queue manager that can be used for prioritization, resource allocation, as well as determining single or multi-threaded job queues. You also have the capability to monitor your active, queued, and completed jobs and perform further action if needed. You have the ability to hold, cancel, or even override priority on jobs depending on their state. Job queues can be defined explicitly within a project from the scheduler as well as from the GA Command API. These job queues can help meet service level agreements by providing priority as well as runtime resources to appropriate jobs. Now, each time a job is run, it will produce a unique ID completed job audit. The detail of the job log is dependent upon what the log level is set to. Within the control section of your project is where you can define your log level. By default, it's set to verbose, but can be as vague as silent or as detailed as debug. Now, these can be set at the project level, the module level, as well as the individual task level. This can be particularly useful when trying to decipher why a specific task or module keeps failing. You can set the individual task at debug while keeping the project level at info or verbose to avoid having overinflated log files and making for easier searching of what is pertinent. The basic and advanced searching of the completed jobs can be very useful when tracking down projects for auditing purposes or just to recall results. The advanced search is very granular and can either narrow down exactly what you want to help find the project that you only have minor details about. Now let's look at some of the advantages of GoAnywhere Advanced Workflows. That component library. We have over 100 unique tasks to design automation. These advanced workflows can handle pretty much about anything that you or any process you can come up with. Also, very, very popular with our customers is that automated PGP encryption and decryption process. I have a lot of customers that have to deal with regulations or multiple partners that need to encrypt and or decrypt files and have the full-featured PGP key manager that's built into the product to make it easy to leverage within projects to automate that encryption and decryption of secured PGP files. The reading and writing capabilities. This is a huge benefit to be able to parse out information from a multitude of file formats and do further processing with those results. Auditing is always a key element within GoAnywhere. Depending on the regulations that you have to stand for, auditing and accountability are a very important aspect of security, but it's also the informative data that helps track as well as troubleshoot jobs. It's also nice on the client side to have transfer and initiation, be able to kick off projects and automate your file transfers and manipulation needs. Resources, you can definitely save on time and personnel resources by getting rid of these manual processes. And also, we'll talk about resources a little bit, and those are leveraging this connectivity to other servers and services that we can make available to these project automation. The intuitive workflow project outlines, they eliminate the need for programming backgrounds. Even guys like me can do some workflow automation. User interface is definitely friendly, as we'll see in just a second. I think most of all, let's eliminate the manual processes and potential for human error. Now with that, let's go ahead and jump into the screen. I'm going to go and switch over here. I'm hoping you guys can see my screen here. Andrew, let me know if you can. It should be the GoAnywhere Managed Admin interface.
Yep, we can see it clearly.
Okay, great. All right, so let's take a look. One of the first things that we need to talk about when talking about workflow automation in projects is resources. Now, resources are going to be GoAnywhere's way to dip into those other servers and services to leverage things that we can make automated within the actual project. Some of the common resources you can see, there's tons of them within here. Due to time constraints, we'll kind of take a peek at a couple. Database server seems to be a very, very popular one. As you see, we can add a database server just by providing the driver. We do load all the common drivers. The URLs, sometimes maybe not the most intuitive thing in the world, but we do have a wizard here. You click on that, select your actual driver, put in the host name, and then go ahead and hit the generate button, and it'll go ahead and generate that URL for you. Go ahead and cancel that here. Put in the username and password that is valid for this account. And with every single resource that we do have a test button. It's kind of our sanity check. It does a couple things. One thing, it checks for that network connectivity to that resource. And then two, checks to see if the actual username and password, if applicable, is valid. Once we have that resource test successful, obviously that's a good thing. Now we have that resource available to us in our projects going forward. One of the other ones, again, there's tons of different resources that we can leverage for our projects. But one of the other ones that we do see quite often is our SSH servers, in particular our SFTP servers. Here again, we'll put in some information, host port that's listening on, username and password. But one thing in particular I do want to point out is that connection tab. It's also nice to have within projects, and we'll see the error handling from the project module as well as individual task level. We also have, auto retry attempts at the resource level. So for our SFTP, FTP, and FTPS type servers, we can have those connection retries so that in case maybe a router reboots or a server goes offline for a little bit, we're going to go ahead and retry that connection, and if successful, we'll go ahead and resume where we left off instead of having to retransmit the entire file. Again, we'll do the test from here. If successful, then we're good to go, and now those will be available to us within the actual project. And let me get rid of that window there. There we go. Okay, so let's get over to our projects here. Again, when we first go to workflows and projects, you're going to see kind of like a Windows Explorer window here. Either you can set permissions at a top-level domain level on the folder, or we can do individual folder permissions to keep out unauthorized access to your projects. Creating a project is as easy as clicking on the Create Project. Now, even if you have no idea what to do here, we'll just give it a project name. It's nice that we do have about 40 different templates that you can choose from. Over the years, kind of pick out some of the common themes or common tasks that a lot of our customers like to do. You can select one that fits your needs, go ahead and open that up, and then navigate through the actual task and change the actual workspace or the attribute windows to match up to what is on your need. So this will give you a nice template, or at least a good starting point to create a project from scratch. So let's go ahead and go back here, and let's go ahead and open up a certain project. We're going to touch upon a couple projects that we kind of talked about earlier in the presentation. We'll kind of walk through these here. This one here is kind of going through that first slide that we looked at from a initiating standpoint and outgoing connection. So we're going to take a file, which is not a file yet. We're going to dip into a database. We're going to pull out some information via select statement, write that to an Excel file. We're going to take that Excel file, we're going to PGP encrypt it, and then we're going to SFTP it out the door to our trading partner. All the while, if everything's successful, let's go ahead and send out an email confirmation. If there's any problems within this project, let's go ahead and send out an email as well, letting them know about the actual problem. Let's look at a couple things here as we talked about real quick within the Project Designer window. One, you'll notice the component library, and this is where all our 100 or so different tasks are available to us. We can either double click or drag and drop them right on into the projects. A couple other things here, the validate button is going to make sure that the project actually compiles successfully. The execute button, which we'll do interactively here in just a second to show you how that works. Debug, now if you happen to run into some problems, we can go through the debug mode, and this can go step by step. As you'll notice, the task that's up right now, we'll go ahead and hit next. You'll see the job log filling in as the tasks go through, and it'll tell you either information or any error messages that pop up for your debug capabilities. And then also, as I mentioned, each project that you're creating in the project outline here, this nice graphical interface, it also has a backend XML that it's building. Now, for those savvy users, you can actually edit the projects within the XML, but I think a lot of our folks like to use the GUI that's set up here. Okay, so let's take a look at this project and kind of go through this. One of the first things we see is we're actually creating a couple variables. Again, these are going to be user-created variables to where we can give initial values, which in this case we do. But also this gives us leverage to be able to have programs pass in parameters at runtime for this particular project. Again, this particular project is grabbing information out of a database, writing to Excel, encrypting, and then SFTPing out the door. One of the first concepts we'll kind of see is we've got a create job and an associated delete job workspace. This task is made for some of those complex projects that are doing a lot of manipulation or file movement, and you need a temporary workspace or temporary location to do all these steps. The create and delete job workspace are your tasks. So we'll do those two tasks here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and do our SQL task. That would be dropping database down. We'll pull that SQL task right on over. The database server that we select in this drop-down box, all these databases that we pull down this drop-down box are going to be provided by the resources that we talked about when we first logged in. Everything that you define in resources are going to show up in this drop-down box. From here, we're going to do a subtask, which add a query, which we'll do here. And this here is going to do a select statement of that actual database, the database GA demo.employee, where wages is greater than or equal to the variable that we set initially called minimum salary. So again, we put an initial value of $25,000. Now we wouldn't have to. We could make it to where we have to pass a value in, and we'll kind of show how we can manipulate this variable at runtime. One of the key statements in this step here, this query, is everything that comes out of this select statement is going into an output variable called data. A very key concept that usually the output from one task is going to be the input from another task. You'll notice that also the output variables, this automatically gets created over in your variable section. We'll see that we also can implement conditionals. This is here just for kind of demo purposes. This is basically saying if records found, which was the variable that we defined, equals true, let's go ahead and create these, or let's go ahead and do these next 4 tasks. So if we do find anything out of this select statement, this data actually has some information. This will be true, and we'll go ahead and do our next steps. So the first step, let's create an Excel file from that data we pulled out of that SQL query. So that input row set variable, or basically the input of that task, is going to be the output from the SQL query. Now again, our nomenclature or syntax for variables are $ curly brace, variable, and then close curly brace. But if you happen to forget, again, these automatically get created. We can drag and drop those right on over there. Here we're just going to put an output file to employees.xls. If the file exists, we're going to overwrite. There are certain defaults. You'll notice if you hover over the actual verbiage here on the left, you can click on it and it will tell you what the actual default option is. In this case, it's rename. We chose to overwrite. The advanced tab, we can kind of dress it up a little bit. Let's give a sheet name of employees, and let's go ahead and include the column headings. These are not necessary to fill in, but just kind of making it a little bit more easily readable. And then again, output variable. From this task, we're going to put it into an Excel file output variable, which leads in, as you probably guessed, to the next task, the input file. Again, if we forgot that, it's going to be automatically created. We can drag that right on over there. The PGP keyring resource, again, this would be something that you would have to define over in our resources, the actual PGP keyring. Again, as I mentioned, we do have an open PGP key manager within the product, so it'd just be a matter of importing and exporting your public keys and importing your customers' private or public keys for encryption. And then the output file, again, we're going to put into a variable PGP file. And as you probably guessed, we're going to select an SFTP server, again, from the resources list, and do a put command to put that file out there. If everything's successful, let's go ahead and email out a confirmation. If not, one of the things we can look at, as we talked about, we can do an on error on the module level, which is what we're doing here. So anything that goes wrong in here, we'll call the problems module, which is basically sending an email. And you can also do, at the individual task level, you can do on error modules. Now this one's calling the SFTPs failed, which doesn't actually exist, but if we wanted to, we could create a module just by dragging that over, call that SFTP failed, and create any task specific to the SFTP resource. Probably an email just saying, hey, by the way, the connection to the SFTP server failed, whatever you want it to do. So let's go ahead and use the interactive execute job here, see what happens here. Again, as we mentioned, each individual job that gets run gets an individual or unique ID. This can be viewed right here from the view job log if we do an interactive execute. But if it's run on a schedule or batch, you can always go to completed jobs and look at them here. So if we look here real quick, we'll go through a lot of these steps, but the first one is that query. You'll notice it pulled in the initial $25,000 for the minimum salary variable. That pulled out 974 records, added public key to encrypt the file. We uploaded it via SFTP, and then we go ahead and closed SFTP and delivered the actual mail, which, by the way, we should have gotten an email saying the message was delivered successfully. Go ahead and take a peek here real quick. So 1023, yep, go ahead and we've got that actual email delivered successfully. And then we close the task. One thing to note, now if we talked about those variables, if we did actually pass variables from another program or the GACMDs, we can actually pass in different values for those variables. Let's go ahead and execute advanced. That'll give us the chance to change those variables. And let's put in a value of 90,000 instead. And let's go ahead and execute that. We'll view the job log. And we'll see now that select statement is going where wages is greater than 90,000. And instead of 900 and some odd records, now we only have 172 that fit that criteria. So just an example where you see sometimes there is no file to send to your partner. Maybe you need to dip into a database, pull that data out, and also set up variables so that you can be dynamic in how that information gets pulled out. Let's look at the flip side here. Let's look at maybe something that we receive. We talked about triggers very briefly. Triggers are basically ways that users, any kind of user action, can kick off a certain project, email, move, delete, rename, certain kind of file activity. For this particular example, we'll kind of look at an SFTP or an HTTPS upload. So for this one here, I have a trigger set to monitor on upload successful. So any file that is uploaded successfully to my system via the HTTPS or SFTP protocol and has event username equal to D Freeman, I want to move the file, the actual path, to work stuff, archive, and trigger. So let's go to the archive and trigger folder, and we don't have anything in there now. Let me go to the client side. Let me log in real quick to the client side. So this will be the HTTPS protocol. So this would be partner A logging into your system or just SFTPing something up to your system here. We can say we'll just take this next steps. We'll drag and drop that right on in there. We see that it was successfully uploaded. So there's our successful upload trigger. It was under the D Freeman user account, so we should see that next steps text file in my trigger folder, which is where it's at. That's just a simple way, again, now that trigger, as we look at here, is just doing a move file. You can definitely do a lot of different things from an actual trigger. Most commonly, or most, I guess, specific or detailed would be to call a project similar to what we just looked at to go ahead and kick something off for further manipulation. This was just a simple example to show you how triggers kind of work. And one of the last examples we'll show you here, we do have a lot of customers sometimes talk about file retention archives as well as those retention policies. Sometimes it can be quite a tedious task if you have multiple file locations, manually copying the files to the destination and archive folder, deleting out that original staging file directory, verifying proceed with the further processing on that destination file. These can get very, very complex and labor intensive, especially for multiple directories. Now, these manual processes inherently are subject to that human error, which can cause non-compliance with either retention policies or in some cases actually have too much information that can be discoverable in case of an audit. So one of the projects we'll look at here, this one's just kind of a utility almost. This could actually be a standalone run as a scheduled project on a specific directory, or as we see in this case, we have a couple of variables that we want to pass or leverage to be very flexible in our actual retention policy by days of how old the files can be, and then also the directory that it's actually checking. So some of those main concepts here, again, are going to be these two variables that we're passing in at runtime. We have a retained days variable, which we're giving an initial value of 60. But this retained days value is defined by our timestamp module here, which is right up here. So our set timestamp, and if we do our actual format, we're looking at the days a month, we're doing a minus of the actual retained days variable. So whatever we're passing into this project is going to be that many days old as far as the actual retention policy goes. The clean directory, this variable is just defining the actual directory that we're targeting to look for those files that are older than the retained days retention policy. That goes to the create file list task, and here the base directory, again, we're leveraging that variable to define either at runtime or within another project to call this project to go ahead and do that retention policy and clean up those directories. So this one, pretty quick and simple here, looking at the actual setting of the timestamp. I have a current format of the year, month, day, just ISO standard format there. This here is just going to do a couple print statements and comments to kind of go through to kind of, when we look at the actual log file, it'll pull these out and make things a lot more clear as they get defined and as the project actually runs. But here we're going to leverage an actual loop, and we're going to go through the actual remove files variable that we set from the actual directory of the files to remove, and then we're going to go ahead and produce that file list and then remove or do a delete statement to delete the actual files that fit that category. So let me take a look. Here we'll just look at the actual archive directory that we have here. This would be kind of a simulation of archives. One of the things within the create file list, as you may or may not have noticed, I did not point out, but it does have a recursive function on that. So not only are you looking at the base directory of the variable that you're passing in, but also any subfolders within that. So within this project, let's go ahead and go to projects and run this advanced. Go ahead and pass in a couple of the variables. We'll do the 60 days, and we'll just do a local host, the archive directory. Go ahead and execute this command here. We'll view the job log. And it kind of goes through and it'll list out the clean directory that we passed in, or the directory that we're looking to archive or clean up, auto cleanup. Gives you the date of when the last day of when it can be created. So July 8th is the cutoff date, removing files older than 60 days old. And we'll go through the whole list here. At the very end, give you a list of the 3 files that were older than 60 days old and the ones that were actually removed. And go ahead and do your auto cleanup or archiving of these documents. Now this is just a simple, really quick way of showing how you can leverage certain tasks within the automated workflows to make things automated, to make things to where you're not doing your archive or retention policies by human error or by human manual processes to go through these things. This can make sure that you can run these tasks on an automated basis to keep you in compliance, can keep your retention policies okay, as well as keep the auditing of everything that gets run is going to be kept within the audit logs of every job. Now these are just a couple examples that just scratches the surface of what can be done with advanced workflows. I really hope that these few examples we showed today can give you an idea of how GoAnywhere advanced workflows can work for you, and probably more importantly, save you time and money. If you guys do have questions, please contact your representative or sign up and use the MFT community forum, which actually out here is a great resource. And it's a great place to share ideas and learn a lot more about GoAnywhere. So I highly encourage going out and using that community forum. We do have a couple personnel on staff that checks this community forum and works with not just the community to answer the questions, but also staff here at Lenoma. So again, I hope these help, and thank you for your time.
Great, thanks, Dan. That was a great overview. Happy you walked through it. We did have a few questions. We will have, since we're out of time, someone reach out from our team to answer some of the specific questions. I did want to quickly mention we are doing a series of events here, and this is just the first one of 5 that is coming yet this year. Here are the details that you can access those online using the URL up above, and we will send that out as well in the follow-up email. And I will make sure to get all these questions over to the appropriate person and get those answers for you. So thank you for taking the time to join us today, and we look forward to seeing you on one of the next ones. Have a great day.